Welcome back to my channel. I'm Traven, and in today's video we're going to talk about my favorite genre of all time and why there simply isn't enough of it. So if you follow the channel for any length of time, you know that I sit comfortably in the sci-fi, fantasy, horror, branch out and do some mystery books occasionally. I wouldn't say that I read very broadly. That is a fairly narrow and common subset of reading that people do. I was chatting with my wife the other day and she was like, I think that mystery is really my favorite genre, but you know, there's not a whole lot of variation you can do in that and keep it fresh. And I was like, I think if I had to say what is my favorite genre, it is specifically the gambling psychological thrillers that come out of Japan. And so I wanted to take today to talk about those because you might not be familiar with these titles. And yeah, I'm basically just going to go through, talk about a few that I've read and my rankings of them. Some of these have never been released stateside, and I'm very frustrated about it. And some are getting domestic releases. So again, we'll start with probably the lowest one for me, and then we'll end on my favorite. The gambling psychological thriller subgenre is something that, again, is primarily out of Japan. You might be familiar with Kaiji or with Kakegurui or the movie Animal World, which was a take-off of Kaiji. These are all stories where gamblers or liars or someone gets into these competitions where they have to play these games and cheat other players and outthink them in order to survive and get to the next round. And the games are usually set up in a way where if you don't win the round, then you are basically a slave. You have so much debt that these elites will come and take you away. It's very much a precursor to something like Squid Game, and the idea of the very blatant anti-capitalist message and anti 1% message is very clear in these, that the rich can just do what they want and take what they want, and the poor are there to suffer and bow to their whims. Some of the titles we're going to take a look at are more straightforward than others, but they basically have that premise of there are puzzles or games that the characters have to figure out to get out of a life or death situation, and they have to use their wits and their clever manipulation of the rules in order to get out and advance and get to the next round or survive another day. The first one I want to talk about is Enigma. This was a short-lived Shonen Jump series. Gives me vibes of like 999 or Virtue's Last Reward, that video game series. You have a group of students who are trapped in a alternate dimension school, and they're not able to get out, and there's all these crazy puzzles they have to solve to move forward and progress through the school and try to find the mastermind that has trapped them there. The twist that this one gives that the other titles are not going to have is that each of the characters has some sort of wild special ability. So if I recall correctly, and it's been years since I attempted to read this, the main character has something where he can go inside of pictures or go inside of books, do something with paper abilities, which is really weird. I believe the female lead, the girl right here, I believe she had a notebook because she was obsessed with the main character. She had a notebook that would tell his future, so she could see what was going to happen to him in 5 minutes or 10 minutes down the line. There's a character in here who can rewind time, but I think there's something he has to do in order for that to happen. Maybe he has to hold his breath or something like that. And there's a character who can take an object and he swipes it, gives it a number, and then you can manipulate that number and it makes it smaller or larger. So just, again, wild abilities. The first arc was a lot of fun, trying to use their skills to get through these challenges, find these clues, find out who the mastermind is, and then it really fell apart after that. I feel like the mangaka really didn't know where to take it after that. The mastermind behind the whole first set of trials wasn't really like a Jigsaw type character who was like out to get them. He was out to test them because there are some more dangerous people coming in. So the second arc started up and it started introducing new villain characters, and I think was going to try to set up like a new lock room thing for them, but then it was canceled and just completely went away. I remember my rating for these volumes goes like 5, 5, 5, 4, 1. It became so terrible, but the opening was a lot of fun, and I appreciate that it was trying to infuse something new to this genre beyond just the straightforward gambling aspect of it. Now, Kakegurui does actually have a American release. It's up to, I think, 16 volumes at this point. I've read through all of them, and this one goes a little bit lower for a couple of reasons. The first is that the games in this one are a bit hit or miss. There have been arcs that have been great and have been really clever manipulation of the rules and really surprising moments when a character pulls something out and you're like, I can't believe they did that. That changes everything about how the game has been played so far. And there have been some that I felt were kind of lazy and kind of cop-outs for character development that we really didn't need. But I digress. The main reason why I can't recommend this to everybody is because of the main character. So Yumiko Jabami is the main character in this one, and she gets very excited about gambling to the point where I can't recommend this to everybody. Like, she gets physically excited about gambling and high stakes, and it gets very raunchy and very fan servicey. The premise here is that Yumiko Jabami attends a school where gambling determines everything, so students are free to gamble with one another, and the ones who lose are made into what they call house pets. They basically have no rights and have to obey the rules and the whims of all the richer students. There is a student council, of course, which is all powerful because this is a manga series. The current arc of the series is seeing kind of a shakeup in the student council. So the student council president decided, hey, it'd be a great idea to just relinquish my position and then have a big gambling tournament to see who's going to be the next head of the school. Stakes are fairly low in this one because it is a school setting. But they have this idea of course, these rich students in the school are just children of people who own the biggest businesses in the world or are the leaders of Japan. They are getting their power and their influence through their family connections. So it definitely still has that common trope within this genre of being anti-capitalist and being anti inherited wealth. This one also doesn't normally have the idea that I like in some of the others, that cooperation is important. There have been a handful of times where working together has benefited multiple parties and the ones that you're rooting for, but it's not a core idea behind the story. And I think that kind of misses a little bit of what makes this genre so special. Yumiko is insane. Like, she is willing to put herself and others in insanely dangerous risks just to have a good gamble, just to have high stakes. And so she's often not a very good character and not someone you'd want to emulate or look up to. So that also further complicates it. The sexual stuff that's in here that makes it so hard to recommend to others. I sound like all those people, oh no, I just read it for the clever games, not for the sexiness. I would recommend this if that is something that doesn't make you uncomfortable. It does have really great games in it and really great turns, and it is available in English, which is a big plus. Kaiji Gambling Apocalypse, which is another one of the more straightforward. This person's a gambler. He goes on to this ship that promises the opportunity to get rid of his horrendous debt. And then, of course, it becomes a game of, I believe the initial one is like a rock, paper, scissors game played with playing cards, figuring out the distribution of the cards and like making alliances and trusting other players is what ultimately helps him get through to the end of that first round. By the end of the first round, I think he's even worse off than when he started up, and so the only option he has is to go to the next insane tournament that they're hosting, the next insane task that the elites have cooked up to try to get these people to gamble their lives away. Kaiji starts off as a terrible person. He is a horrible, degenerate, gambler, thief, and he is gradually realizing the importance of humanity and the importance of like pulling together. One of the other aspects of this comic that I really like is the art style. So it might look very off-putting at first, but the mangaka has been very upfront with his assertion that the characters are supposed to look grotesque and disgusting because it mirrors their inner selves, and so many of the characters here are horrible human beings. The games in Kaiji are pretty good, and the ways that they evolve over time are very interesting. I will say that I think Kaiji is the slowest moving of any of the ones we're talking about. This like rock, paper, scissors game on the ship takes like the entirety of the first 2 volumes, and these things are thick. This is like several hundred pages in length because we put together several different volumes for the American release. So let me see. Yeah, it's like a 500-page book, so about 1,000 pages, I would wager, to get through what's essentially the first round. That could be a little bit off-putting, but you also get like a lot of comic for your money. I enjoy the games on here with one exception. The last arc that we got stateside was this like walk of death across these beams between 2 buildings, and it was far less about clever manipulation of the rules or realizing something insightful about the situation they find themselves in, and more of the book just like hitting you over and over with the idea that you are ultimately alone as a person and we don't have others to hold on to, and then kind of pushing back against that idea too. A very confusing arc in trying to instill its theme, but still an entertaining read. And I know that the next arc is going to be like a one-on-one gambling with like this head guy for the group that is getting all these gamblers to join in this game. So that's exciting, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm not sure when Volume 5 is going to be out, but 4 volumes of this are out stateside if you want to take a look at it. It's a lot of fun. The last one I want to talk about today is Liar Game, and Liar Game remains my favorite of this genre, despite never being in English and how hard I had to work to get through these volumes just to understand what was going on. These are the Japanese volumes, and this is a seinen series. So because it's a seinen series, it does not have the furigana next to the kanji. So usually, like in a Shonen Jump comic, you'd have little pronunciation guide next to the kanji for a lot of these words, because it's made for kids and they might not recognize that word. But this is made for adults, and they expect adults to know a bunch of kanji and a bunch of common words, and so they don't do that for you. So it's a lot harder to work through. In this book, we've got Now is our main character, and she finds herself in this competition for the Liar Game. The games start off pretty straightforward. Now is given 10 million yen and another person's given 10 million yen, and they have to steal the other person's money. And so it just becomes a competition of like, he comes to her and lies to her about something, and then she comes back. She has to actually find help with another character who's more of like a drifter gambler type, and so he helps her to like outwit the guy, and they end up getting past round 1, and then of course she gets suckered into round 2 because the person that she thought was her like a financial planner, I think it was, someone that she trusted, actually just like tricked her and signed her up for the next round. So she gets suckered into that. There is a lot of talking in this comic. There's a lot of dialogue. It's basically just people standing around discussing with each other what's going on in the game, what their thought process is behind it. The games in this one are easy rules, but complicated execution and the way that they go about manipulating the rules and changing things and taking advantage of little edge cases is really clever. The other thing I really like about it is that ultimately now finds out in almost every game that if people would just cooperate, if people would just work together, they could all be fine and advance to the next round, or all be fine and get their debts erased. But those plans are always thwarted by human greed, because there's always a player or multiple players who are like, I'm not going to go along with your plan, and I'm going to backstab everybody and double cross. And so that's where the complications lie. I just remember when reading through it how incredibly insightful it was, how clever it was, how fun it was. I've watched a couple of the films that have come out for Liar Game that were very fun, and those are a little bit easier to follow because you've got the tone of voice and everything, you've got the visuals that go along with it. Now is a really amusing character. There's one point where they're having a competition and she lies to her opponent. She lies about something, and her opponent's like, why would you do that? Like, you've said that you never lie. And she said, no, that's not what I said. I said I don't like to lie. I said I hate lying. But she does it in this one instance because she knows she has to do it to get through this person and get on to the next round. Thinking about how clever the games were, I never felt like any of the games were amiss or didn't make any sense. And how it has not only this idea of the like anti-corporate messaging, but also the cooperation messaging behind it. The idea that maybe the whole point of the games was to get people to cooperate and realize that cooperation is important, that's part of the Liar Game, is finding out that you should work together. And even if that's not true, the idea that it did work out so many times, that cooperation was the key to moving on to the next round, to eliminating the debt, to making sure everyone broke even. There's no magical elements to it. There's no uncomfortable moments. The characters look kind of creepy when they start like bugging out and revealing that they're evil. But other than that, it's mostly just people standing around talking about, here are the rules of the game, and then people like, oh, here's how I'm going to play the game, and then people revealing like, here's how I manipulated the game and outsmarted everybody, haha. And so I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the clever back and forth between like the game rules and the way that Nao and Shinichi would work together to come up with a plan, or like you'd flash back to a conversation they had before about, okay, this is how we're going to do it, this is how we can manipulate this game. And it was just a lot of fun. So this is my number one of this genre. Not available in English, but I remember having so much fun with it when I was reading it back when I lived in Japan. I hope you enjoyed this look at a more obscure genre, maybe something you hadn't heard of before, hopefully some titles that were new to you. I love board games and I love the idea of games, and so I think putting those together where you have like the game element, you have the manga, you have the strong storytelling, and you put that all together. That's why this genre speaks so much to me, is because it's pulling together so many of the things I love and putting them together in one package that's often very entertaining, with nothing more than character dialogue back and forth, and doing so playing these interesting games that you can manipulate in clever ways. Let me know down in the comments below if you know of any other titles that fall into this genre, or if you've read any of these titles. Give me your thoughts on them. I know I need to pick up Alice in Borderland, and I want to expand my horizons on this because I'm caught up with the two major ones that are being released, to my knowledge, in English. So any recommendations would be highly appreciated. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so we can grow this corner of our BookTube community. And until the next one, take care.